While Trump threatens to seize Greenland by force, a quieter takeover is already underway. And it's happening through the same billionaire who planted the idea in Trump's head. Ronald Lauder, the Estee Lauder heir who convinced Trump to buy Greenland back in 2017, isn't just talking anymore. He's buying his way in. Through a Delaware-registered company called Greenland Development Partners, Lauder has quietly purchased stakes in strategic Greenlandic companies. But here's what nobody's reporting. His business partners in Greenland are some of Greenland's most influential people with very, very close ties to Greenland's foreign minister. That's the same person negotiating Greenland's response to Trump's threats. This is economic infiltration disguised as investment, and I'm going to show you exactly how it works. I'm Stephen Hørlund, and I'm a Danish social scientist specialized in international politics. This is the story the media isn't telling. Let me introduce you to Greenland's Development Partners. It's a Delaware-registered investment consortium, and if that sounds deliberately obscure, that's because it is. Delaware corporations are famous for one thing, and that's opacity. Delaware is the shell company's capital of America, where you can hide ownership structures and avoid scrutiny. According to Danish newspaper Politiken's investigation, Lauder is a key participant in this consortium. And the consortium has bought stakes in two Greenlandic companies. One of these companies is called Greenland Water Bank, and it's owned by two Greenlandic businessmen, Sven Hardenberg and Jørgen Wever Johansen. Hardenberg is a former top civil servant and top advisor to the Prime Minister of Greenland until he got fired recently. He was also the director of Greenland's national energy company. In other words, he knows the system inside and out. But Jørgen Wever Johansen is far more interesting. Johansen is a former minister in several Greenlandic governments, and he currently chairs the governing Siumut party in Nuuk, Greenland's capital. Siumut is one of the four parties in Greenland's current coalition government. But that's not the real kicker. His wife is Vivian Motzfeldt, the foreign minister of Greenland. That's the person responsible for handling foreign relations, including relations with the United States. Just take a moment and think about what that means. Ronald Lauder, Trump's friend and advisor on Greenland, is now in business with the husband of Greenland's foreign minister. This isn't just investment. This is influence buying at the very highest level. And I will explain why that is the case. The company Greenland Water Bank, it sounds small and innocent. And it really is. In fact, in 2024, the company's accounts showed minimal staffing costs of only $5,500 and a modest financial loss. In other words, this is a very small company. Greenland Water Bank bottles water from the Lingmark Spring in Qeqertarsuaq on Disco Island. And I'm sorry for messing up the pronunciation completely. They sell the water locally in the brand name Imivik. Until 2024, the company was fully owned by Hardenberg and Wever Johansen. Then they sold part of their shares to Lauder's investor group. Now, here's what Hardenberg told the Danish newspaper Politiken about why they took Lauder's investment. The investment is not the most important thing for us, but rather gaining better access to the luxury market where our water should be a natural part. When they tested the water, the conclusion was that our water was the best in the world. It is on the basis of that they became interested in participating in the development of our company. So you could say Lauder's pitch is very simple. We'll help you sell premium Greenlandic water to the American luxury market. But what did Lauder get in return? Why would one of the world's richest men invest in this tiny company in Greenland? Is it the pure water on bottles that he is interested in? Or is it something else? The two founders of the company wasn't able to attract any other investors since the company started in 2016 and until Lauder showed up. Personally, I can only see one thing Lauder gets out of this, and that's a pressure point and a foothold into Greenland's top elite. Direct business relationships with politically connected Greenlanders. Think about it. Sums of invested funds can now flow very easily to Sven and Jørgen through Greenland Water Bank. It could flow directly as large salaries or bonuses, or it can be in the form of a business trip, a fancy office, luxury boats, or cars. All, of course, in the name of the company, paid by invested money from Lauder. The possibilities for enriching Sven and Jørgen are endless, and so is the money that Lauder has at his disposal. $10 million is nothing for Lauder, who is good for 5 billion USD. But being in business together can also be a pressure point. An investor can sue you and make your life a living hell, especially if the pockets are very deep and you can buy every lawyer and PR person to spin stories and drag people through the mud. That's the negative pressure angle that this corporation can also lead to. But the most controversial part is still the connection to the active foreign minister of Greenland, Vivian Motzfeldt. The foreign minister previously served on the board of Greenland Water Bank, but she must have felt that that would have been too obvious a conflict of interest. But the problem is still there. It's the family connection to her husband that makes up the problem in the company that's now partially owned by Trump's friend, who also happens to be the brain behind Trump's acquisition plans. In other words, if Ronald Lauder decides to invest a large sum in Greenland Water Bank and also pay out a huge bonus to Jørgen, this money will also enrich Vivian. If it was almost any other investor in the entire world, it wouldn't have been a problem. But why Lauder? In this very particular case, and with the enormous stakes for the Greenlandic population, I'm actually in total shock that this has not been reported widely and it's not widely known. In my personal opinion, it's a blatant conflict of interest in the face of an American hostile takeover of Greenland that will put the future of the Greenlandic population and culture at great risk. Unfortunately, this looks like the beginning of what we see in almost every other developing nation, where small elites enrich themselves in exchange for concessions to large multinational companies or large states. And Greenland Water Bank has already been through its first scandal back in 2023. That was when Greenland sent a delegation to a trade event in Washington, D.C., and Greenland Water Bank was chosen to represent Greenland. Critics asked the obvious question: why was this company that is already connected to the foreign minister family chosen to represent Greenland in America? The answer was never really satisfying. Greenland is at 57,000 people trying to navigate pressure from the world's most powerful country. They don't have the resources to properly vet every foreign investor's political motivations. They don't have intelligence agencies tracking billionaire networks and money flows. They desperately need foreign investment to build economic independence from Denmark, but the same need makes them very vulnerable to exactly this kind of pressure. It's a very classic trap. You need capital to become independent, but accepting capital from certain sources compromises your independence as well, and Lauder knows this. This is a playbook that has been used for centuries. Here's what my concern is. Ronald Lauder is not a friend of Greenland. Lauder wrote an article in February 2025 calling Greenland America's next frontier, not Greenland's next frontier. And you know what the frontier means in an American context. That's where American settlers can essentially expand to the detriment of the local populations. Lauder defended Trump's views that US control of Greenland is an absolute necessity. These investments aren't about Greenlandic independence at all. They're about American control, greed, and money. And the timing is not coincidental. Lauder started these investments right as Trump renewed his push for Greenland in 2025. This is coordinated. While Trump makes public threats about military force and economic pressure, Lauder is building the private infrastructure for American economic control in the background. It's a two-pronged strategy. Public pressure from Trump on the one hand and private infiltration from Lauder on the other hand. And Greenland, unfortunately, is caught in the middle. If you want to understand more about Greenland's path towards independence and the forces working against it, check my other videos here and here. And if this investigation opened your eyes to how economic infiltration actually works, hit the subscribe button and support this channel. Thank you for watching and take care.